everybody, and welcome to the Millennial Revolt, an independent political talk show that seeks to bring a different narrative than the stale one we have going on right now in the mainstream media. So because the election is taking up most of the news cycle, we're not really talking about what's going on in the Korean Peninsula and the rising tensions between South Korea and China. Now, President Park could possibly be impeached, which some lawmakers are hinting at over the deployment of THAAD. And we're going to get into this right now. After months of negotiations between Washington and Seoul, they finally reached an agreement and would deploy THAAD to the Korean Peninsula. Now, many people see this as a way to contain China because, as you know, the Obama administration started a pivot to Asia. China and Russia have both denounced the deployment to THAAD, saying this would interfere with both of these countries' defenses, though the United States protests and says that this is to stop the North Koreans. There was a press release from the United States Korean forces that said the system would be deployed in response to North Korea's continued deployment of ballistic missile technology, which goes against the United Nations Security Council resolutions. Now, the United States has done something like this before when they deployed a new ground-based missile system in Romania, which they said would stop Iran from launching missiles into Europe. But many people believe that this is aimed at Russia, and Russia quickly blasted the system as a threat to its security. There have been huge protests in South Korea over the deployment of THAAD, and relationships between South Korea and China are at an all-time low because of this deployment. A 3-day visit to Beijing by six South Korean opposition lawmakers have deepened the political divide in the country over the deployment of the missile system. All of these lawmakers are critics of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD, while they were traveling to Beijing at the time when relationships are just deteriorating quickly. So some South Korean politicians are now labeling them as betrayers who could possibly jeopardize national security, and the South Korean President Park Geun-hye also criticized them as sympathizers to China. Now, this isn't the type of language that you would use if you want to get people on your side, because this is extremely dangerous. You have China is a world power, and you have Korea, who is one of their biggest trading partners. Both of them are now at odds because of this. Such accusations of this have triggered strong reactions among South Korean opposition parties. A major South Korean opposition lawyer said it is possible to impeach President Park over her turning a blind eye over the growing public opposition over the deployment of the missile system. Tensions between Beijing and Seoul have reached unprecedented levels after the latter finally decided to deploy the THAAD system on its soil, despite repeated oppositions from China. So China has continuously made their case saying why they shouldn't deploy THAAD, saying that this would cause so many problems at the time when North Korea and South Korea's relationship is at an all-time low. They cut off lines of communication, and China is having issues with Japan and the whole South China Sea. Now there's an issue with the East China Sea. So there is just a lot going on in Asia at the moment. The South Korean lawmakers said they did not intend to align with Beijing, but rather they wanted to meet with Chinese scholars to understand China's stance on the issue and discuss ways to prevent bilateral relationships from worsening. So that's something that you need to do. You need to talk with people from other countries. You need to understand where they're coming from and how they think this will endanger their citizens. So Seoul's decision to deploy the THAAD unit not only poses a serious threat to China's security and strategic interests, but will end up damaging South Korea's own interests as well. Many politicians and liberal activists are calling for the government to reconsider deploying the missile defense system, and people around the country have continued holding rallies against the planned THAAD deployment. According to Gallup Korea survey released, only 33% of respondents said that they were satisfied with President Park's performance, while 53% held an unfavorable view. So this is not good. At a time when political unrest is at an all-time high in your country, you have something major as a possible missile defense being deployed, and your unfavorable numbers are as low as they are. And given the fact that she lost majority in their government, doesn't look really good for her. President Park has said there should be no partisan differences when it comes to issues dealing with the lives of the people. She said in an effort to rally public support behind her decision to set up the THAAD battery in Sangju County and northern Gyeongsang by the end of next year. She said that any objections raised by opposition lawmakers would be no different than siding with North Korea on the issue of THAAD and harming national security. Now, for me, this statement is very telling and extremely dangerous because it reminds me of when George Bush was saying that you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. Now, we know how this played out. We know that you had good people who wouldn't normally vote for something that goes against their beliefs on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, voting for the Iraq War that turned out to be an extreme disaster. We ended up in a quagmire in the Middle East where we still are today. Hundreds of thousands of American soldiers dead, millions of Iraqis dead, mass refugee crisis, people drowning in the sea. Afghanistan turned into a failed state. Then eventually we started bombing Libya. Eventually now we're bombing Syria. So these things have ripple effects, and I think she needs to look at history. Take the United States as a perfect example of what not to do. Listen to the people who are in opposition to this. Listen to your citizens who are protesting this, and keep this in mind. The best way for there to be peace on the Korean Peninsula is for South Korea and North Korea to come into agreements, for South Korea and North Korea to engage in trade, and to help the North Korean people, even if there is a communist government in place. The United States, South Korea, Japan keep pushing this country into a corner is not going to help them. It's only going to create animosity. It's only going to create tension, and it's not helping these people. And the thing that kills me, that gets me so mad about this situation, is there are their family members on the other side of the border. Like this isn't people from across the world. They have family members on the other side of this border, in the next country right over, that's directly next to them. So it boggles my mind to say, well, if people are in opposition to the deployment of a battery system, which they think will endanger their their national security, that you're siding with North Korea. No, these people are thinking. These people are looking at history and looking that we're all neighbors. We need to work together. Now, Park made the complaints came amid a growing controversy over Menu members, which is a political party in the South Korean parliament, when their visit to discuss the THAAD issues and listen to China's concerns. They met with the Communist Party members, Chinese businessmen, and professors. The trip sparked backlash from the presidential office and the ruling Sangru Party, which went so far as to brand it as diplomatic humiliation and flunkyism. The president's office also issued a scathing criticism of Beijing, saying the latter's protest of the THAAD decision was unreasonable and suggests more actively confront Pyongyang in times of provocation. So basically, South Korea is saying, don't look at us, look at North Korea, look at them, look at what they're doing. But there are two sides to every issue. You can't just point the finger at one country and say, well, they're starting it, so we're going to up the ante. You don't do that. You don't do things like that. You have to talk, and I am extremely proud of these lawmakers from breaking rank and from going to talk to China, because China is a strategic partner for Korea. You know, they're one of their largest trading partners. And they also export, South Korea also exports a hell of a lot of things to China, including K-pop, which is China's biggest import. So President Park also indicated she had no intention to backpedal on the decision to deploy THAAD, saying that she was determined to face whatever criticism to protect the people. So, according to South Korean media, over 1,000 members of the ruling Sang-Gru Party, which is President Park's party, currently they are in a minority in their government after losing the last election. These people have applied to withdraw from the party in protest against the decision of the deployment of THAAD. So she really is in a political crisis in her country because of this. You have thousands of citizens protesting throughout the country. You have your own party against you, and you're still pushing ahead with this. So it's just going to be interesting to see where this goes, and I'll keep an eye on it. I'm the Millennial Revolt. Thank you guys so much for watching, and you have a great day.